Africa is the second largest continent on Earth and home to many great nations that have contributed immensely to the growth and development of human civilization by sharing its art and resources with the global community. Over the past few centuries, the continent has been focused in exploration, which has led to the discovery of various natural resources like gold, diamond, salt, limestone, herbs, and most recently, crude oil. Crude oil has become a major source of fuel and has integrated itself into human everyday life thanks to its ability to be used for multiple things. Now, let us take a look at the African countries that produce the most oil. According to Trading Economics Global, macro models and analysts, hopefully you would learn a thing or two about Africa's role in the global oil sector. But before we dive into the countdown, kindly hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so as not to miss out on our subsequent videos. Number 10. Chad, 110,000 barrels per day. Chad makes it at the 10th position in the oil manufacturers list, producing about 110,000 barrels of oil daily, making it the 40th largest in the world. It was the first country to include oil transportation and refining in the scope of the EITI report. Chad is a leading producer of crude oil in Central Africa, with international companies represented by the ASO Exploration and Production Chad Inc., the China National Petroleum Corporation International, and the Glencore Consortiums, which are the key actors in the exploration, production, and refining of oil, alongside the Hydrocarbons Company of Chad. Number 9. Gabon, 210,000 barrels per day. The country produces about 210,000 barrels of oil per day. Income from oil production in Gabon accounts for 50% of GDP and 80% of the country's export market. According to the report, the country has approximately 274 million tons of intact oil reserves. Gabon happens to be the 9th largest African oil-producing country in the African continent and is ranked at 37th in the globe. Thanks to corporations and a rich abundance of oil in the country's economy has grown to be solely dependent on its oil production. Crude oil production in Gabon is expected to be 280,000 by the end of its quarter, according to Trading Economics and Global Macro Models and Analysts. Number 8. Equatorial Guinea, 227,000 barrels per day. There are several oil deposits in this country, with the largest Zafro oil field, which has 1.2 billion BPDs of reserves. The country produces about 227,000 barrels of oil per day. Oil and gas accounts for about 85% of the country's exports, making it the 8th highest crude oil producing country in Africa and also ranking 34th on the global scale, producing tens and hundreds of thousands of barrels on a daily basis. With over a billion barrels of oil reserve, Equatorial Guinea is home to the 8th largest oil reserve in the sub-Saharan region of the continent. Number 7. Republic of the Congo, 259,000 barrels per day. The Republic of Congo's daily oil production is about 259,000 barrels and ranks the 36th largest oil-producing country in the world. Oil production accounts for about 85% of Congolese exports revenue and almost 80% of the government's total revenue. Congo's oil daily production figure has a high chance of declining as a result of natural declines at mature fields. The Oxford Economics March 2021 forecast indicates that the real GDP will grow by 4.8% in 2021, following the 10% contraction in 2020. This decline followed a decrease in global trade and investment as a result of the 2019 coronavirus disease, the outbreak, and the OPEC Plus agreement, which was an agreement made by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, of which Congo-Brazzaville is a member, and other countries party to the agreement to cut crude oil production. Number 6. Sudan and South Sudan, 266,000 barrels per day. These twin countries, Sudan and South Sudan, produce about 266,000 barrels of oil per day and are the 35th highest producers of oil globally. Most of the oil production capacity is in South Sudan, but needs to use Sudan's pipelines and export ports. Although most of the oil production and exploration takes place in South Sudan, the ports and pipelines in Sudan are still very much in use, leading to a healthy interdependence of both countries. Sudan and South Sudan signed an agreement that aims to almost double production in the South oil fields over the next 3 years. The deal, which includes technical assistance, aims to increase crude outputs to 300,000 barrels a day from 266,000 currently. The nation already relies on Sudan's pipeline to transport the resource to a Red Sea port. Number 5. Egypt, 490,000 barrels per day. Oil and gas are some of the most dynamic industries in the country, as they produce about 490,000 barrels of oil per day. The Egyptian General Petroleum Corporation, or EGPC, as it is called, is a state-owned oil company that is in charge of controlling and overseeing all oil-related activities in the country. Egypt's exports of petroleum products spiked 33.8% during the first quarter of 2021, amounting to $1.819 billion, compared to the less $1.35 billion during the same quarter of 2020, according to the Central Agency for Mobilization and Statistics. The agency stated in a statement that the most important petroleum products whose exports value increased was crude oil, reaching $399 million compared to $325 million in 2020. Number 4. Libya. 1 million barrels of oil per day. Gas is said to be very cheap in this country. Libya produces about 1 million barrels of oil per day. The state-owned National Oil Corporation has been in control of the oil and gas sectors in Libya for many years now. The biggest challenge for the country is to keep production and fields mature while new fields are discovered and developed, and therefore it is rarely explored. How much oil is left in Libya? Many ask due to the political instability, but the oil reserve of Libya has proven reserves equivalent to 594.2 times its annual consumption. This means that without net exports, there would be about 594 years of oil left. Number 3. Algeria. 1.34 billion barrels per day. The country is rich in natural resources thanks to hydrocarbon income. The country produces about 1.34 million barrels of oil per day, giving them the 10th largest oil reserves in the world. Algeria has consolidated itself as one of the movers and shakers in the African oil sector. The country's state-owned oil company enterprises National Sonatrach, which is responsible for ensuring that all oil corporations keep in line with the Hydrocarbon Act of 2005. International companies like Total, Statoil, and many others are involved in the mining, exploration, and production of oil. Number 2. Angola. 1.8 million barrels per day. The country produces about 1.8 million barrels of oil per day when at its oil-producing prime. The oil and gas industry accounts for about 45% of the country's GDP. In the country, a major share of the oil operations, from exploration to refining, is all done by international corporations under production contracts with Sonangol, Chevron, and ExxonMobil, which are but a few of the big oil corporations operating in Angola. This has led to the maintenance of steady oil production and growth in the country. Number 1. Nigeria. 2.53 million barrels of oil per day. The African giants have been Africa's largest oil producers for quite some time now. The country's economy relies heavily on the oil sector, which accounts for more than 95% of export revenues and about 40% of government revenues. The country produces about 2.53 million barrels of oil per day. This has long changed since Nigeria came back in 2019 to fully consolidate itself as the number 1 largest oil-producing country in Africa. Nigeria also has many oil-producing states to boast of. There you have it, explorers. Those were the top 10 oil-producing countries in Africa in 2021. Thanks for watching this video. If you want us to cover any of your top 10 videos, leave your suggestions in the comments and we will do well to grant your request. Also, if you did enjoy this video, do well to give it a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe and share with your friends.